project. All right. Well, welcome. My name is Corey Van Broekhoven, and I'm the president of the Lititz Historical Foundation. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad that the weather kind of turned in our favor, so that's good. And if you're not familiar, this is day 2 of Lititz Fire and Ice, so I highly encourage everyone to, after the program today, head downtown, check out the ice sculptures, visit the shops, grab some good food, and it's actually going on until next Saturday. So if you don't have an opportunity today, there's plenty more opportunities in the next couple of over the next week. Okay. Just a few announcements. This Monday, speaking of fire and ice, it's also President's Day, and that's Family Fun Day at our museum. We're going to have a lot of fun, scavenger hunts, tours, gift shop specials, and a magician, Andrew Imhoff from Lititz, from 12 to 3. It's a free event. There is a small fee for the tours, so stop into our museum, and we'll be happy to see you. Our next program here is March 16th, and it's going to focus on women at war with York historian Dominish Miller. And RSVPs for that program begin March 2nd at 9 a.m. You can either call the library, or if you follow us on Facebook, go to that event page, and then we'll share the link in order to sign up. So again, that's March 16th at 1:30 in this room. Okay. Our second annual community yard sale will take place May 11th in our Mary Amy Gardens. We're going to have over 25 vendors, and if you want to come shop, great. If you want to come sell, please do so. You can go to our website and sign up for a vendor space. Space for a 6-foot table is only $20, and this is a fundraiser for the Lititz Historical Foundation. So if you're interested in selling some things, doing a little spring cleaning, consider, like I said, signing up to be a vendor at our community yard sale. Also, just a reminder, we have several different kinds of tours to choose from. I know it's cold right now. We have a Johannes Mueller House tour that you can book year-round. That's inside and that's warm. And we have walking tours. We have ghost tours of Main Street. Something new that we really expanded on this year was our Whiskey and History tour, which is a partnership with us and Stolen Shift Distillery. And all these tours are, we have a lot booked already for this year. The Whiskey and History tour seems to be very popular. So, yeah, to book any of our tours or to learn more of what we're all about, if you're not familiar with us, I encourage you to go to our website, which is lititzhistoricalfoundation.com. Okay? So now, just another minute, I'm going to turn it over to Patrick. I do want to point out a couple things, though. I know some of you already bought books. He's going to be selling books after his talk. They're $5 each, cash or check only, and he'll be happy to autograph them for you. Before he does that, though, at the conclusion of the program, there's a gentleman. Where is he again? There he is, right there. He was nice enough to donate this, which is a rare edition of one of Patrick's books. This is signed, and I guess we can do like an auction or however we want to do it. And all the proceeds for this, he's pledging to go to the Historical Foundation. So we thank him for that. Okay? Now I have to get my phone out and read Patrick's illustrious biography. Over the past half-century, Patrick Reynolds has created weekly illustrated features on the history of New York, Pennsylvania, Texas, and Washington, D.C. for newspapers across the country. I've been wanting to get him for a couple years. We finally connected a few months ago, and if you don't know who he is, you're going to learn more. And it's hard to just go into a lot of detail about his prolific career. But here's a few more highlights. His stories have been further published into over 40 books, which have sold over 100,000 copies through the years. He recently retired from doing his Flashback comic strip, which has been carried by the Washington Post and several other newspapers for over 31 years. He also has done a history auxiliary textbook called Texas Sketches for Harcourt School Publishers, which recently used some of his work in a Washington, D.C. school workbook. His most recently published books are Strange But True Facts About the Civil War, First Pennsylvania First and A Cartoon History of Texas. He's going to be doing what you call a chalk talk, and he's going to have 3 different sketches. And once these sketches are done, they're going to be on easels here, 1, 2, 3. And you said you'll sell those too, right?
Right.
For about $20 a piece? Is that what you said, or?
The large ones will be 20 and the smaller ones will be 10.
Okay, so there you go. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the program over. Like I said, we're very excited to have Patrick Reynolds here today. So Patrick.
Can you turn the movie off? Great, okay. Well, let me just start by loosening up and warming up, okay? You mentioned about my background in doing history, but I not only I've written and illustrated history stories, but I also participated in several major historical events. When I was a senior at Pratt Institute, I was one of the few guys that can do any lettering and sign painting. So I got a job uptown in Harlem for a woman named Maylie Duffy, and she ran a talent agency that booked burlesque acts in black burlesque houses across the country. And my job, reason she would normally do this, but sometimes the chalk leaves my hand, but I never do my fingers leave my hand. Anyway, I had to free her up because she was on the phone all afternoon or all day, making calls to various bus companies and chartering buses. This is March 1963, and the buses were going to pick up people at various churches in the metropolitan New York area and take these people to what was going to be called the March on Washington. So that summer, I'm watching TV, and there's Martin Luther King on TV saying the I Have a Dream speech. I went, geez, I helped with that. So anyway, we've done that. Put this here, and next, wrong story. This one here. Being in front of the second audience, I'm just so nervous. Anyhow, I'll concentrate on a lot of Lancaster stories. Not a lot, just a couple of them. Joe Royer and his partner Joe Huber ran a confection shop at the corner of the northwest corner of Prince and King Street. And shortly after the Civil War, they got this great idea to make novelty items out of candy for Easter. And when the other confectioners found out about it, they thought these two guys were nuts. But anyway, what they did was they got they're going to carve bunnies and ducks and stuff like that. So I mean, other confectioners thought, you guys are not crazy, but they went ahead and did it anyway. They made paraffin molds and they fill these molds with the animals, and when they came out, it was a big success. However, all the other candy making guys who thought it was start coming to their shop on Queen Street. And that, by the way, they hired several apprentices to learn the candy trade. And one of them was a kid from 9 Pointsville, Lancaster County, named Milton Hershey. Anyway, Hershey was born in actually in Dauphin County, and the family moved down here in the 1850s or something like that. And Hershey went to school on the second floor of a chicken house. So his first job, he was an apprentice to a printer. And the printer was a really strict guy and would constantly be on Milton's case. So one day Milton got so shook up that he dropped his hat in the printing press, and the guy promptly fired him. So anyway, Milton afterwards got that job with the Joes, and he was there for about 6 years, and then finally, eventually, his mother sewed some money into his coat, and he went off to Philadelphia to start his own candy making business, and he did all right for a couple of years. He hired a lot of young boys to deliver his candy all over the city. However, one day, the candy that was carried by one of the kids, they're all delivered on wagons. And the wagon upset and spilled all the stuff, all the candy, all over the street, and people rushed out and scarfed up all of the candy. And that was the end of Milton's candy career. Now you'll notice that I put, some of these drawings have stuff preset, like the straight lines here. That's because it's too difficult to draw a straight line from the side and keep it straight. Anyway. So after the incident in Philadelphia, Milton decided to join his father, who had left for Colorado to try to make a fortune in the silver and gold mines. So when young Milton got there, he found that Denver was a pretty tough town. So what he did was he bought a gun. So that's what this is, if I get it right. So one day Milton was walking down the street and he sees a sign that says, "Boy Wanted." And since at that point he was having a tough time finding work. So he knocked on the door and the guy answered, called him in, and I'm looking for work, and the guy says to him, "Go through that door over there." So Milton opened the door and found a bunch of kids inside, desperate looking and all. He realizes today's term would be human trafficking. He ran into boys that were going to be sent to the coal mines and labor camps to work with low wages, with very little money or anything to us, and no way to escape. So at that point, Milton turned to this guy and whipped out his gun and said, "Let me out of here." Oh, no, like, actually, Milton said to the guy, "Let me out of here." And the guy said, "You're not going nowhere." At that point, Milton whipped out his pistol and said, "Get out of the way." So he walked out. As Milton's walking down the street, the thought occurred to him. These kids have no money, but I have $100 in my pocket. I don't really need a job that much. So years later, Milton started a school for boys. And every boy who graduates that school gets his diploma and $100 in cash. Where's my assistant, Corey?
Yes.
Hang this up. Put that over there. Boy, you give a guy a job, he becomes obsessed with power.
Me.
Here you go. Okay. Joseph Rittner hailed from lived for a while in Lancaster County, and he married a girl who was a descendant of the Landis family that settled Lancaster County. And shortly after that, he moved to Washington County and got very involved in politics. Was elected to a bunch of terms to the state legislature, and in 1835, he ran for governor of the Commonwealth and was elected. So he ran on the anti-Masonic ticket. Back then, there was a lot of paranoia among certain people about organizations like the Masons and the Oddfellows, mainly because they were known to take secret oaths and have closed meetings and all. So nobody really knew what they were about. The anti-Masons attracted a large following. And so as the anti-Masonic candidate, Rittner was elected. And then he ran for re-election in 1835, and he lost to another guy from originally from Norristown, and his name was Porter, and Porter had been the state representative from Huntington County. Oh, by the way, there's a highway between Carlisle and Shippensburg named after Rittner today. Anyway, Rittner lost the election. However, the vote count that he lost by, out of 250,000 votes, about 500,000 votes cast across the Commonwealth, he lost by less than 5,500 votes. Consequently, Rittner refused to leave the governor's mansion. Sound familiar? Anyway, one of the reasons back then, I should start by saying that here again, I didn't want to take time to mess up and draw straight lines, so they're pre-done. the reasons he lost the election was because of a guy named, the state representative from Adams County named Thaddeus Stevens. When you say the name Thaddeus Stevens in Lancaster County, oh, I can't stand the guy. So, you know, he helped get the 14th Amendment passed abolishing slavery, and the rest of his life nevertheless, he was a rather colorful character. And he was also an anti-Mason. And why he got the election lost was because he took the anti-Masonic money from the Masons and used it to sell patronage jobs throughout the state government. So it became common knowledge, and so he lost the election. When Rittner refused to leave office, he barricaded himself in, like I said, in his governor's mansion. Stevens teamed up with a guy named Burroughs, who was the Secretary of the Commonwealth. Now, as it does today, the Secretary of Commonwealth runs the elections in the state. Just a couple of years ago, the Secretary of Commerce messed up on getting the notice out of an upcoming referendum vote on a particular change to be made to the state's constitution, and consequently, the measure never made it onto the ballot, and much to the embarrassment of the state government. So it might make it on this time. So this is Burroughs. Okay. So with the election up in the air, these two guys got together, and they came up with an alternate group of winners for the election. And they went to the House of Representatives, and they installed their guy in as the winning candidate. When that happened, they put in charge their guy. Then they walked in, also in the state assembly. They also seated the losing anti-Masons, and actually, when the winning candidate gets in there, there's going to be a lot of fights, fist fights erupted in the State House, and as well as in the Senate. So So they went into the Senate and tried the same thing, and they were chased out and barely escaped through a rear window, which I tried to depict here. Anyway, the crisis continued. So Governor Rittner realizes that he needs some military help. So he goes to the head of the regular army and he appeals to them. Well, the regular army says that's a state matter and the federal government does not get involved with state problems. So he gets turned down. But he has one more ace up his sleeve, if you will. So he activates the Pennsylvania militia, and an outfit from Carlisle comes into Harrisburg to try to, the objective of the whole thing was to restore order and defend public safety. So these guys show up. Unfortunately, the only weapons these guys had were shotguns with 18 rounds of ammunition for each guy. And that gave the name of it, this incident, as the Buckshot War. This one can stay here, Tori. So anyway, I mentioned that I participated in a lot of historical events. I was an art director at that agency for 2 years, and finally the draft caught up with me. So I enlisted because I wanted to become an officer. So I took 10 months and I became a lieutenant in Army Intelligence Service. And from there I was sent to Vietnam, where I commanded a group of about 30-some guys who were photo interpreters, meaning airplanes would fly over the territory and take pictures. And we would get these photographs and they would study them by putting a stereoscope over them, and everything would come up in 3D. And that way we were able to locate where the bad guys were supposedly at. And in addition to that, I was an aerial surveillance officer, meaning I flew aerial surveillance missions several times a week. By the time I finished, I had over 300 missions. And but what happened was one day I was over the northern part of our core zone, and right against the Cambodian border. And I flew this, several times a week. And what you have to look for is, you're looking down, all you see is foliage and jungle and whatever. So I try to remember what the foliage looked like at certain spots. So when I went back the next day, if it was messed up, I knew that Victor Charlie or an NVA soldiers would coming through there, coming south toward the Saigon area. And so one day in the end of January 1968, I'm flying over the same area, and boy, I took a lot of fire. And no one's ever shot at me from that area before. And I came back and made a report to that, and our general put all this other stuff together, and we were put on alert the next 2 nights. And sure enough, the second night, the Tet Offensive broke out. And we were attacked by two different units. To give you an idea what this looked like, the Viet Cong realized that the enemy, with all their local spies, realized that here we have, this is an area, this would call it the 12th Aviation. And then there was a small group here, and up in here was the 2nd Field Force. And our area, this is our area. This is where we were. This is like about, from the end of the park here over to the highway over there. The street, that's what I'm saying. That's all the room we had. Down here was an ammunition dump. And so what happened was, and here was a road that crossed in front of us, you know. And here's our perimeter. Every place along here was barbed wire. And my people were in charge of a bunker and a firing point right here. Down here, the adjoining unit had their bunker, and across here was a bunker for the 12th Aviation. And here's the village over here. And it was the village was abandoned. Down comes the 274th NVA regiment. And the regiment has several hundred guys in it. And they were going to set up their mortars up in here. They were very good at mortars. They could hit a handkerchief half a mile away with a mortar. And so another group up at this end, several miles up, they were the rocket guys. And they fired rockets down on us. And those are highly inaccurate. They didn't hit anything. Meantime, another regiment goes in to this ammunition dump. Ammunition dump stored all the ammo for the entire Corps area, which consisted of 3 divisions at least. Each division has about 20,000 guys in it. So you can imagine the amount of ordnance was in this depot. And they succeeded in blowing the place up. And these pallets go off one at a time. It looked like the atomic bomb explosion when they go off. So amid all this noise down here, in comes the enemy toward us. And then they had this intel that we only had rifles. That's all we carried. And but they didn't realize, the old man here, we would trade a lot with other units. So I had a couple of M79 grenade launchers, and I had a sawed-off Tommy gun from World War II that worked. So these guys had all this ordnance out front there, and once they started to try to come through here, they all let loose with everything, and we held them off for all night till the I call it. They informed me that they're coming in with the Cobra gunships, and they're going to strafe the area there. So they asked me for fire direction control. Oh, by the way, my headquarters was here in this building right here, so I was able to direct fire and all that kind of stuff. So that's where we directed fire for the Cobras when they came in. A humorous thing that happened in the midst of this combat and tense situation, we have a phone hookup with the wires that run from my phone to the front bunker. Front bunker rings me up. It's one of the This kid is like 18, 19 years old. He looked like Dondi from the cartoon characters. They call him Dondi. Dondi gets on the phone. He's like a Spec 4, like a corporal. He says, "Sir, the next time that the firing lets up, can we send someone back for cokes?" I said, "Sure, all right." Next time the fire goes, I see a guy scampering across. Not there, run like hell. Then a couple of minutes later, he scampers back with all his Coca-Colas. "Can we have more ammo?" No, I want Coca-Cola. So that was that. When I was afterwards, they put me in a reserve. So I was ended up in Pennsylvania National Guard, 28th Division. And when Agnes Flood hit, our unit was one of many activated to help people stranded in flooded waters. So that's another historical event. And then 3 Mile Island had a big hiccup in 1969. And when it sort of subsided, I get a phone call from 3 Mile Island Public Relations or some outfit like that saying, we have a job for you. Would you be willing to come on our property?" Job's a job. I'm there. So what happened was that core melted. The core melted, and they devised a way of cutting apart all that debris in there and transporting it out. So they had to invent a bunch of different machinery and tools to do that with. And they had all these engineer plans showing what they're going to look like. But they had to sell that to the politicians that be. And not many people could visualize what something is going to look like from just a schematic. But I did a lot of that stuff. And I did a lot of renderings of what a building is going to look like, called architectural rendering. So I took the thing, and I think must have had 8 or 10 of these that I did paintings of. And they took them and did like a visual presentation in color, showing the guy using it. And of course, it was a nice paying job. But they ended up not doing anything, just sealing it off. And that was the end of that. And then the last big one was in 1975, the United States has already evacuated Vietnam, leaving the South Vietnamese guys on their own. And down from the north comes in force with tanks and all sorts of heavy armor into South Vietnam, and they just gobbled up the country as it moved down. It took them about probably 2 months. Meantime, the humane societies made the decision to evacuate all of the orphanages. And a lot of airlines in the U.S. Contributed aircraft to bring these kids out. When it was all said and done, most of the orphanages were in Saigon and environs. There were 2,500 babies evacuated. You might have heard about the one C-5 that crashed, about a couple hundred babies that were killed instantly. And anyway, well, long story short, my wife and I adopted one of these baby girls. And she was about not even a year old. So anyway, now the most recent historic event I took part in was this meeting today at the Lititz Historical Society. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or whatever? Yes, miss.
Did you draw to occupy yourself while you were in Vietnam?
Interesting question. Did I draw to occupy myself in Vietnam? In a word, no. However, that comes with a really screwy story. When we served the Corps, which was a big deal. The only thing bigger than that was all of Vietnam, and there were 4 corps in Vietnam. So we answered to a 3-star general, and he had all these a big, huge terrain model, about as big as what the seating area here took up, and with all the hills and valleys and stuff like that. And if you see movies with the little flags sticking up here and there, when we would send a report up to the hill, I had 4 guys doing the artwork for them, and it was very neat, done on acetate, which, by the way, I used to trade with the infantry guys partial rolls of acetate for weapons from these guys. So that helped us get armed for that offensive. Anyway, they saw how impressive the general did of work we did for these briefings. And they said, these are the perfect guys we have for this particular job. If you look at see the movies and all of it, little train models with little flags on it, the flags have certain designations for what kind of unit. For example, all the flags look like this. And if a flag has a bullet in the middle of it, that means it's artillery. And if it has this in it, it means it's infantry. If it has a little oval like that, it means that's a mechanized, it means mechanized infantry. So we had our troop, so somebody had to make those little flags, and who gets the job to making the little flags for this terrain model but my guys in my section. So that was one hard job. So these guys are working on these things, and they said, this is such a Mickey Mouse job. Let's put Mickey Mouse on one of the flags. The flags are about that big, and they did. So they have a chart with where each one's going to go when they go up there. And where there was nobody, there went Mickey and Minnie Mouse. There they stayed. So one day, the 3-star General Whalen, who was going along and looking down, he says, doesn't look right to see these people there. He picks it up. He goes, oh, Mickey Mouse, very funny. Yeah. So, but I did a lot of other artwork whilst in the Army, on active duty. One day, I was starting advanced infantry training. That means I'm starting my 3rd month in the Army as a measly private. So they put all the college graduates that were slated to go to OCS in one platoon. So there were 30 some of us. And some lieutenant was in charge of us. So the lieutenant decided to interview us one at a time to see what we do, and I'd say our plans and all. When it got to my turn, I asked all these questions. I said, by the way, sir, I'm a professional artist. So if you ever need any artwork done, you can call on me. Yeah, sure. About a couple of days go by, the first sergeant calls me in. One of the few sergeants in the Army at that time who did not have a Southern accent. He was from the Bronx. Reynolds, we got an art job for you. It's to redesign the day room. The paint's waiting for you in there. Sure. I said, Sergeant, can I have some help? I need two other art guys who are art school graduates. I need Greedy and Graves. Yeah, and them can help you out. So we get into the day room, and in all the barracks and all buildings that the Army has, they're all made the same. Inside, they have, it's all plywood. They lay plywood on the side, just like that there. And it's 4 feet high and 8 feet long. Then they put a piece of molding. Above that is 8 feet high, 4 feet wide. So you have 12-foot high ceilings in these buildings. As soon as we get in there, I said, let's go down to the supply room. We need some tools. We need hammers and crowbars. So guys come back with the hammers. I said, the sergeant goes, what do you need these for? Well, the first sergeant sent us down because we have to work on it. Blah, blah, blah. All right, here they go. So as soon as we got there, I had them rip out all of the baseboard, the 4-foot high stuff. And we got horses, and we flipped them over to the other side where it's unpainted, and we were going to sand those things and and then varnish them and have it look a little more classy. And then we're going to paint the top with the puke army green. so it was going on for about 2 days till the Sarge decides to come check on us. What's taking these guys for? Comes in, and the place looks like a bomb hit it. Stuff all over the joint. All the baseboards have been ripped out. They're laying around. What the hell is going on? I said, sir, you told me to redesign the day room. That's what we're gonna do. We're redesigning the day room. I said, it's gonna be varnished, but I gave him the whole plan. Oh, okay. And out he goes. A couple of days, and then we started painting. And that's finally, at that point, our company commander, Captain Hagenboo, never forget his name, tall, super military, and he strutted airborne wings, and he had another gizmo over here, and that was the Pathfinder insignia. And the Pathfinders are the guys that go in first. They parachute in, and they mark the landing zones for where the rest of the paratroopers are going to drop. Okay, so it takes a special kind of guy to do that. There was our captain. And but before he walked in, we started painting stuff. And I found this huge black cloth that covered the whole floor. And we put that down so the floor don't get messed up. So Hagen comes in, look at it. Right? Pretty nice job. Starts walking out, he looks down and goes, what are you doing using my parachute as a drop cloth? The Pathfinders dropped at night, and their parachutes were black. So I said, scarf it up, everybody. So they're scarfing it up, and I had to say, I couldn't help. The devil took control of my soul. I said, sir, when you think about it, it really is a drop cloth. He left. So, anyway, I'm sorry you asked that question.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
With your history of serving in Vietnam and your ability to draw, have you ever thought of using the two and try to connect with younger generations about what the Vietnam War was like?
Not exactly. We have a program in the Vietnam veterans where they line up like you guys here in front of a room, and the kids come in to ask questions. That's the one program, and I didn't get involved in that. But I was an Army instructor for a bunch of years. One of my students is here, and as an instructor, first of all, they would our school was out of Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and anybody in line who stayed was in line for the rank of lieutenant colonel. They went to that school if they were on active duty, or if they were available, and they also wrote the doctrine, all the lesson plans for how to teach the courses. So I got out of it for a couple of years. So finally they sent me out. You're going this time. I was 1 week long. And so the first thing they do is they take all these instructors from all over the country, around 100 of us, in this amphitheater classroom. Now, afterwards, we break up into various other classrooms and teach the subjects that we're going to be teaching, that tell us how to do it. So they're all in there in mass, and this major comes up there. I think I was a major at the time myself, but anyway, it doesn't make any difference. He comes up there and he says, evening, afternoon, morning, gentlemen. How many of y'all in here are Yankees? We know we're going to be harassed for the next hour and insulted badly for the next hour. And I go. And it goes on for the next hour. Every other comes up. Oh, go slow so you Yankees can follow what I'm saying. You have to go slow, otherwise we won't understand what you're saying. But I kept quiet. So finally it was all over after all that 1 hour stuff. And Up goes the kid's hand. Major, yeah, what? I says, I'm one of the Yankees in your class. I want you to know that despite all of the insults you've hurled at us, that we're not mad at you. We're fine with it. Matter of fact, we welcome to, I says, I'm from Pennsylvania. I welcome you to come to Pennsylvania, and I'll take you on a tour of the state. I'll take you to Philadelphia, show you where we signed the Declaration of Independence and created the Constitution. I'll take you to the Poconos and show you where the honeymooners have heart-shaped bathtubs. I'll take you over to Pittsburgh and show you where we made steel. And then I'll take you to Gettysburg, and I'll show you where we buried your ancestors. 2 years later, he's still there. I'm sent back. How many Yankees are in here? He goes, never mind. Yeah, so one of the things that the Army had started to change. Before that, it was all men that took all these advanced courses. Then they opened it up, they saw the light, and admitted women to all the other specialties. And so they became our students. So we had to sort of clean up our act because they told you to start the class telling a joke. And of course, I knew the most foul jokes ever told. And so I had to clean it up. So what I came up with, I says, I will tell you stories from the Army's history that you never heard of. And I says, the Marines, they're always harping on their history, you know, which they rightly should, but they're a small sport, and we were in a lot more stuff than they were, so we have more stuff to go by. So one of the students' favorites was the Yoo-Hoo incident. And when before the war started, or before U.S. got into it, they had activated a lot of different units from all over the country, and they had training that was known as the Louisiana Maneuvers down in Fort Polk, Louisiana. And all the units from different parts of the Midwest came there, and there was one unit from Nebraska came down there. And they did their training, and they're going back home to Nebraska, and they passed, going up through Arkansas, through Little Rock. On the edge of the road there was a golf course, and in the golf course were several women in their shorts, teeing off, and the guys see that they, hey, woo-hoo, and they just made a big riot, and monkeys had themselves. And in the opposing green nearby was General Neil. For the time being, I'll say his name is Neil. He was a 4-star general. He sees this happening, and he's irate. He goes into the clubhouse, gets on the phone, calls the state police, has the state police stop that whole battalion further up the road and has it turned around, sends them back, and every guy had to get off the trucks and walk in front of these women and say, we're sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Can you imagine how long that took? And it's getting on to be nightfall. Why his parents are waiting for their kids to get back, and they're not back. They're thinking the worst. Were they activated? Did we go to war or whatever? No, or did they already hurt? So the phone rings, and the adjutant general in charge of Nebraska's name was Truman. General Truman, no relative of the president. He gets a call, and he says, I'll take care of that. So he calls the 4-star general, and 4-star general says, just mind your own business. I'm taking care of this. So I learned about this because I contacted that battalion in Nebraska, and I got a hold of one of the guys that was in on that long walk, and that's how I got a lot of my info. Well, anyway, the thing makes the newspapers. The New York Times carries this thing, the Yoo-Hoo incident, and this general. And after 5 minutes out of the door, I'll remember his name. And it becomes a big embarrassment. The general was one of the best ones going. He was a compatriot of General Patton. So years later, when the general dies, his obituary appears in the New York Times, which I have a copy of. And it says, Yoo-hoo general passes away. But one of the outcomes of that was it got so much publicity that a lot of companies branded some of their products. Yoo-hoo, Yoo-hoo chocolate soda came from that. They had Yoo-hoo chewing gum, Yoo-hoo match covers and all. So, any other questions? Yeah.
With your Pennsylvania Profiles edition that you've done, with all the information ties in with our state, I'm not sure how to answer this. How were you able to get the information that you've been able to put into the volumes that you
Oh,
made?
gee, I'm a genius. I read a whole lot. And when I first moved down here was to become an advertising manager for a resort. And part of my job was to come up with the rate brochures for certain holiday weekends. And I would, it had all these graphs and stuff lined up, what it's gonna cost for a 2-bedroom with a suite, whatever, for Friday only. And it was very involved. So I'd bring that into my boss and he would look at it and he'd say, I have one question for you. Is it idiot proof? Idiot proof. Meaning that any idiot can pick up this piece of thing, look at it and know exactly what he's gonna have to pay for the room. He won't have to make any phone calls. So that became one of my guidelines for my career. And the other one was, I worked for the state for a couple of years in the Tourism Bureau, and like 1971, 72. And I collected all sorts of brochures from the other states. And I figured, I'll do stuff the other states never heard of doing. So the first thing I come up with was it was coming on to September and Halloween was coming up, and I thought, I wonder if there's places in the state you can visit that are haunted, not just private homes. So I checked it out, did a lot of research. I found that there's a whole lot of them. And so I did a press release with that and went all over the place. Ends up on the cover of the New York Daily News travel section. And they even had their art department do a couple of whimsical drawings for it. So a couple of weeks later, I was at a writers' conference and I met the editor, the travel editor of the news, and I says, one question, what did I do right? Because, you know, when you're rejected, there's all sorts of stuff you did wrong. But finally, what did I do right? He says, you told me something I didn't know. So combining that with making it idiot-proof, which if you read the New York Times articles, they write it such that you know everything about what they're trying to tell you, and you don't have to guess or surmise anything. So that plus making it a story idiot-proof and making it that you never heard of. So that, a couple years later, I was, the directorship of my bureau was open. And I at the time had delusions of grandeur. And I put in for it. And I happened to be up in Boston at a writers' conference. And they had a comic strip in their front page called Yankee Almanac. A whimsical thing about the historical stories of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. It was delightful. They only ran it for a year. It was before the bicentennial. I said, I can do something like that. I can tie it in with a place to visit. And so I did 3 of them. One of them was the skeletons of a mastodon found in Pennsylvania. And you can see that skeleton rebuilt, and another model of the mastodon made at the Harrisburg State Museum. And then another one was July 3rd. Is a very infamous day in Pennsylvania because 3 battles occurred that same day. And the first one was a massacre, the 44th massacre outside of Wilkes-Barre during the Revolutionary War. And the next one was the Battle of Gettysburg, culminated on the 3rd of July. The 3rd of July was also the massacre of the 44th. And then there was Dewey signaled his Ridley that fire when ready, that famous command. That was on July 3rd, 1898. And Ridley attended a advanced seamanship school that was headquartered in Erie for many, many years. There might have been the fourth one. Oh, yeah. The other one was July 3rd, 1756. General Washington surrendered Fort Necessity to the British, kicking off the French and Indian War. So, all the same day. So I did that in one of them, and on the next one, I forget what the third one was, and I presented it to the higher up, 3 mock-ups. Needless to say, they were super impressed. They were so impressed that they hired a guy from Virginia for the job. So when I didn't get that, I knew my career is now suffering rigor mortis. I got to move on. So he comes back to me and says, "Joe, the secretary, etc., they were very impressed with the cartoon idea. How long would it take you to do one of those every week?" And all I says, I know how long it's going to take. I'm the honest. I says 4 days. Oh, 4 days, that's a long time. I said, no problem. I'm here to work for you. You're the boss. I'm serving you. Go to the higher up, get a letter of understanding written in from them, and say that I can do that cartoon on my own hands and sell it to the newspapers. All right, he goes back next day. There's the letter. There's no conflict of interest. And that's how Pennsylvania Profile started. That was 1976. First one ran around July 4th weekend, 1976. And I started losing newspapers 15 years later. And so the last one that I lost was the Lebanon Daily News. I had lost Scranton also. What was happening was the demise of newspapers across the country. So they're losing circulation, etc. When I lost that Lebanon Daily News, I was burning mad. I said, I am not going to get shot down by a little pea shooter. If I'm going to get shot down, I'm going to get shot down by a big cannon. So I made a presentation to the Washington Post, and they called me down. And anyway, they called me down, and they said, "What are we going to do for you?" Because I was doing two others, Texas and New York City. And I had hired guys to help me out a lot on those things. So they said, "What are you going to do?" I said, if you sign a contract. I said, "No, I signed a contract with you guys. I'm stopping Pennsylvania Profiles." And that's how PA Profiles came to an abrupt end at that point. People ask me, "Did you run out of ideas?" I said, if you run out of ideas, don't get into this business. So, for example, in the news today also, they want to impeach the Secretary of Homeland Security. Was it Mayorkas?
Yes.
They said, first time in 150 years, they're going to impeach a cabinet officer. Yeah. Well, who did they kidnap, impeach before? I saw his name mentioned in one place. That was it. All the newscasters could care less about reading up on it. So it happened in 1876. President was President Grant, and he had a Secretary of War named William Belknap, Belknap. And he was a pretty good Secretary of War. One of the major accomplishments he did in 1876 was he found out that there was a warehouse in New York City that was housing thousands of Matthew Brady's photographs from the Civil War. And that's kind of a misconception, because Brady had a lot of guys working for him. And he couldn't have taken all those pictures by himself. So I could find out who they were, but I didn't want to bother. So that was one of the good things he did. But then he had a place on Lafayette Square right next to the White House. And he would throw these super lavish parties several times a month. And one day there's a reporter from the New York Journal looking at him and goes, "I wonder why a cabinet officer can afford such a big deal." So he looked into it, I should say. And he found out that Belknap was on the tape from the trading post. If you wanted to establish a trading post anywhere in the country, and trading post is an old term for what is now the PX. You had to get your okay from Belknap, and Belknap would give you the okay if there was a little something left on the table when you come out. So that's, I mean, each one of those would cost thousands of dollars. So when they found out about it, they had a hearing, an impeachment hearing, and who was one of the officers they dragged into it was Colonel George Armstrong Custer. They bring him into Washington. So Custer went over before the committee and testified what was happening. Now here's where Custer messed up. Well, anyway, they impeached Belknap, and shortly after that, during the impeachment process, he resigned. He died a couple years later. But meantime, Custer's in town. And the military has a certain code of conduct that no matter what your rank is, you follow. And the commander of the Western Outpost was stationed in Washington, D.C. Custer never went to see him. He just got on the train and went back to Montana. And then you should also call on the commander-in-chief, who was a former general, President Grant. He didn't go see him either. These two guys put their heads together. Let's give Custer the worst assignment you can think of out there. And that's how he ended up. Eventually had Little Bighorn. If he only been a nice guy. Any other questions? Well, anyway, the drawings will cost $10 for the little ones, and the two big ones are 20, right? And then, but before you, don't take the board with you. Bring it over to me and I'll cut them out, because those boards are hard to get. And some of them can be rolled up. The one over there, that can't be rolled up.
So why don't we do
the auction
for this? Actually, Patrick, can you tell a little bit about what they're bidding on today?
Yeah, this is volume 2 of the Pennsylvania Profile series, published around 1978.
Okay.
And I think as I was doing these, I would run out of copies. I would reprint them. So I know at least 10,000, I think, of these were sold.
I was hoping you'd say this is the only one.
Well, I can't get them anymore. I couldn't get them the last 5-10 years. And when I do get a hold of one, I used to charge $30 for one. But then that would go right away. So I now charge $50 if I ever could find one. And I would advertise it on my website or something like that.
And it's signed too, so.
Well, I valued it, but anyway.
So, do you want to, do you have any practice or history of being an auctioneer? Or
When I was in college.
okay, well, that's more than I had. So we start. So why don't we start the bidding at $5, since is what these both were.
Who'll give me 10? Who'll give us 10? There you go. Going once for 5, twice, 10. 10 over there. 15.
We have 2 10s, so.
2 10s.
There you go.
Okay. The bid is now 10. You have 15. Do I have 11? So the bid is 10.
That's on her, 10.
10, okay.
Okay, I'll do 11.
That's my mother, too. Just saying.
Yeah. The 11. How about 13? 13. How about 15?
And she's my friend.
15. 15 going once.
Come on,
20. Make it 20? 20.
20, okay.
All right.
I'll go
30.
30.
Now we're going to award it. Who's driving, who's walking?
It's actually
30. The bid now is 30.
no more. 35.
35. Very
Yeah,
good.
And that will go to Corey, so I'm gonna say 50.
There you go.
I'll go 55.
You're gonna be able to meet the payroll.
I know.
Right. How about 60?
You know what, I'm gonna make her cry, I'm gonna say 100.
Excellent.
Are you gonna cry?
This is the mother of the Historical Society Executive Director.
Oh.
I'm so glad she was able to be here today.
Lancaster Historical Foundation.
Thank you. So Patrick is gonna stick around, and sell more books, sign books, and, they're $5 each. I think you had said what the prices are for those,
Yeah.
and, you just have to take them, like you said, off the board.
I'll take them off for you.
So, thank you so much, everyone.